I was born into extreme poverty. My mother forced to sell her services to the cruel Lady Barthimont in order to survive. Soon after, my parents vanished under mysterious circumstances. Although haunted by my mother's desire to escape the Barthimonts by any means necessary, I chose to stay to uncover the secrets of the Barthimonts' estate. I spied on the horrific rites the lady practiced in her blood-drenched chambers, and out of desperation, I learned to harness those occult powers. I felt trapped, my life in peril. I had no other choice but to use the dark ritual against the lady and her cult rising as a Shadowborn to slaughter my sadistic captors. Possessed by a longing that would not rest, my growing hunger led me to the monastery and beyond into Harathael. There, I hunted the creature of nightmare, enriching my evolving flesh with their bloody essence. Deeper I delved into the bellows of hell, where at last I met a ferocity to rival my own. Perched upon Doomsday Peak, Blasmophet regarded me with a mighty greed. Yet, as I stared back, down the mauled beast, I felt only the cravings of the famished. I ripped and tore at old Blasmophet, bite by bite, until I had consumed the ember of body and tortured soul. Yet, as the last wet morsel slid down my throat, I realized the deadly bargain I had unwittingly struck. Today we will be looking at Levia's Shadowborn Abomination. If you don't know the fundamentals and general game mechanics, I strongly suggest watching the Learn to Play guides by LSS, and visit the Heroes of Fab section for additional information. Link will be in the description. Levia was first introduced in the Flesh and Blood set Monarch back in May 2021. Then we were reacquainted in July 2023 in the 10th set Dusk Till Dawn. The hunger that possesses Levia will only be satisfied when everything has been devoured, including existence itself. Manage your graveyard carefully to gorge upon, or else you may find your shadow consuming you. Let's have a look at her hero ability. If a card with 6 or more attack power has been put into your banish zone this turn, cards you own lose blood debt during the end phase. Blood debt is a keyword existing on shadow cards. At the beginning of your end phase, if you have cards with blood debt still in your banish zone, you will lose 1 life for each card with that keyword. You will need many cards with 6 or more attack power in your deck, and plenty of ways to send them into your banish zone to keep your inner demons at bay. As you journey with Levia, you will have access to the Brute, Shadow, and Generic card pool. Levia has a few weapons to choose from, but today I will cover 2. Firstly, Levia's signature weapon is Exegor the Death Hydra. Not as widely used, but still interesting when used with the correct tools. This 2-hand flail weapon can only be wielded by shadow brutes such as Levia. It mentions, once per turn action, for 2 resources, attack. Whenever you attack with Exegor, it deals damage to you equal to 6 minus the number of cards with blood debt in your banish zone. This will require you keeping a high blood debt count in your banish zone. I won't go in depth with this one in the gameplay, but I will provide a quick example shortly. The second weapon and most widely used in Levia is the Mandible Claw. Once per turn action, for 2 resources, attack. If you have discarded a card with 6 or more attack power this turn, Mandible Claw gains Go again. Since this is a one-handed claw weapon, you can equip 2. Another great weapon is the Ravenous Meat Axe. But to keep this guide as short as possible, I will not be covering this one today. Let's have a look at some budget equipment that can be used with this hero. Hooves of the Shadow Beast says, whenever a card with 6 or more attack power is put into your banish zone, you may destroy Hooves of the Shadow Beast. If you do, gain 1 action point. This is fantastic, as many of Levia's attack doesn't have Go again. Additionally, this one can block once, and being battle worn, this will not be destroyed after blocking with it, meaning you can still use the action ability if not used yet. This is a really great budget option. Next, if you want to test your luck, we have Bark Bone Strapping. Instant. Destroy Bark Bone Strapping. Roll a 6-sided die. Gain resources equal to half the number rolled, rounded down. For example, you rolled a 3, this will give you 1 resource. You rolled a 6, this will give you 3. This one has Battle Worn as well. Then we have Ebenfold, a Shadow Common Head equipment that says, Instant. For 1 resource, destroy Ebenfold. Banish a card from your hand. If it's a shadow card, draw a card. A great utility instant here that can help turn off Blood Debt. Additionally, it has Spell Void 2. If your hero would be dealt arcane damage, you may destroy this equipment and prevent 2 arcane damage that source would deal. This is particularly great against Wizard or any hero that deals arcane damage. The Darkness suite of common equipment, especially the arm piece from Dusk Till Dawn, are decent budget options as well. As mentioned earlier, your deck will require a large amount of 6+ attack power, not only to turn off the Blood Debt tax, but to also gain key advantages throughout your game. Levia not only needs to keep an eye on her deck, but also manage her graveyard, banish zone, and life total. Your early game will consist of filling your graveyard and playing cards that won't tax your graveyard. Then you will want to shift to a more aggressive game plan. Your end game will depend on a few factors such as your opponent. Let's have a look at some examples of Shadow Brute attack action cards that Levia can use. Ram Raider. As an additional cost to play this, banish a random card from your hand. If a card with 6 or more attack power is banished this way, this gets Go Again. Going wide is not something that Levia does naturally, so being able to gain Go Again can be a great way to keep the pressure on. Mark of the Beast. If Mark of the Beast would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, instead banish it. This can come in clutch if you were not able to banish a card to turn off Blood Debt. Graveling Growl. Play Graveling Growl only if a card with 6 or more has been put into your banish zone this turn. For only 1 resource, this one packs a punch, but do note, a card with 6 or more attack power is required to be banished prior to playing this. Cards like Ram Raider can facilitate this. Deadwood Rumbler. Draw a card, then discard a random card. If a card with 6 or more attack power is discarded this way, banish a card from a graveyard. Don't need to turn off Blood Debt just yet? Deadwood Rumbler offers great utility since it mentioned banish a card from a graveyard, meaning this can target your opponent. Shadow Blasmophet is similar to Deadwood Rumbler, but if a card with 6 or more attack power is discarded, search your deck for a card with Blood Debt. Banish it, then shuffle your deck. This can either help to turn off Blood Debt or search a card that can be played out of your banish zone. Just a quick note about Deadwood Rumbler and Shadow Blasmophet, it will be very important to avoid having too many in your deck since they both do not have a block value. The next few Shadow Brute attack actions we will look at has an additional cost of banishing 3 cards from your graveyard. Note, since the additional cost must be paid, you will need a minimum of 3 cards in graveyard to resolve any of the following. Let's have a look at Endless Maw. As an additional cost to play Endless Maw, banish 3 random cards from your graveyard. If a card with 6 or more attack power is banished this way, Endless Maw gains +3 attack power. Dread Screamer's successful banish provides you with a huge payoff. If a card with 6 or more attack power is banished this way, Dread Screamer gains Go Again. The next 2 are non-attack action cards that has the same additional costs. Let's have a look at Convulsions from the Bellow of Hell. If a card with 6 or more attack power is banished this way, the attack action card you play this turn gains +3 attack power in red, 2 in yellow, 1 in blue pitch, and Dominate. The Dominate effect means your opponent can only defend an attack with a single card from hand. This includes playing defense reaction from your hand. Note, your opponent can still block with available equipment, as well as play defense reaction from their arsenal. Playing this one late game can be devastating for your opponent if they don't have ways to deal with Dominate. Lastly in this category we have Unworldly Bellow. The next brute or shadow attack action card you play this turn gains +4 attack power in red, 3 in yellow, and 2 in blue pitch. You will notice you don't need to successfully banish a 6+ attack power for the bonus to occur on this one. Very important note, once you start banishing cards from your graveyard with Blood Debt, your hero ability will now be online. You will need to make sure to manage the Blood Debt in your banish zone each turn. There are many more great Shadow Brute attack action cards, so make sure you check them out. A few special mentions are the following non-Shadow Brute attack actions. Recursion. Discard a random card from your hand. This one is useful in blue pitch and Levia for its block, pitch, and attack power. The next one is Swing Big. If Swing Big doesn't hit, the defending hero creates a Quicken token when the combat chain closes. 8 attack for 2 is amazing. The Quicken token says, when you play an attack action card or attack with a weapon, destroy Quicken, then the next attack gains Go again. Yes, it can provide a Quicken token to your opponent, but to get this, they will require to give quite a few cards in exchange. Let's have a look at some impactful non-attack action cards you can use. Blood Rush Bellow. As an additional cost to play Blood Rush Bellow, discard a random card. Your brute attacks gains +2 attack power this turn. If the discarded card has 6 or more attack power, draw 2 cards and Blood Rush Bellows gains Go again. This card can turn the tides around in your favor quite drastically. It not only applies to your brute attack action cards, but all brute attacks, meaning your weapons as well. Blood Dripping Frenzy. As an additional cost to play this, banish your hand. Draw a card for each card with Blood Debt banished this way. Your brute and shadow attacks gets +X attack power this turn, where X is the number of cards with 6 or more attack power banished this way. Go again. Remember Exegor the Death Hydra? Blood Dripping Frenzy is a great example to use it in tandem with this weapon. I'll place an example here. Let's say our hand is a red Ram Raider, yellow Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell, red Deadwood Rumbler, and Blood Dripping Frenzy. We have 4 Blood Debt cards in our banish zone. Let's play Blood Dripping Frenzy and pitch the Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell. Then we must banish our hand and draw 2 cards since the 2 cards banished had Blood Death. Let's say we draw a yellow Unworldly Bellow and a red Dread Screamer. Our next brute or shadow attacks gains +2 attack power since both cards were 6+ attack power. Then we can swing with our Exegor the Death Hydra for a total of 8. And since we have 6 Blood Debt cards in banish, we take no damage. At the end of our turn, we take no Blood Debt since we paid the Blood Debt clause, placing the Dread Screamer in arsenal. Levia also has access to some great defense reactions such as Reckless Swing. As an additional cost to play Reckless Swing, discard a random card. If the discarded card is 6 or more attack power, deal 2 damage to the attacking hero. This can be the final blow if your opponent is on 2 or less life during their turn. Guardian of the Shadow Realm is another interesting one that you can recur from your banish zone. Speaking of recursion, Shadow heroes have access to some shadow cards that can be recurred out of their banish zone, such as Howl from Beyond. You may play Howl from Beyond from your banish zone. The next attack action card you play this turn gains +3 attack power in red, 2 in yellow, and 1 in blue. Go again. Note that this one can pump any type of attack action cards. All heroes have specific specialization cards that can only be played in their respective hero deck. At time of recording, for Levia we have Soul Harvest, Doomsday, and Levia Redeem, Blasmophet, Levia Consumed. Let's have a look at Soul Harvest. First part says, as an additional cost to play Soul Harvest, banish 6 cards from your graveyard. It gains +1 attack power for each card with Blood Debt banished this way. Ready to turn the valve on Blood Debt? This is a great one, especially if you can grab some recursion pieces. The second part will only apply if your opponent is a light hero such as Bolton and Prism. But if it hits one of these heroes, the effect is quite devastating. If Soul Harvest hits a hero, banish all cards in their soul. They lose life equal to the number of cards banished this way. Next, we have Doomsday, the legendary Shadow Instant. Play Doomsday only if there are 6 or more cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone. Create a Blasmophet, the Soul Harvester token. Blasmophet, the Soul Harvester is a 6 attack, 6 life shadow token demon ally that says, once per turn action, at no cost, attack. Whenever Blasmophet attacks, you may banish a shadow card from your hand. If you do, you may banish a card from a defending hero's soul. Attacking for 6 at no cost is great. Banishing a shadow card from hand can have some useful perks if you wish to either turn off Blood Death or place a recursion piece. The other part will require your opponent to be a light hero. Your opponent will require to attack Blasmophet directly and deal a total of 6 damage in 1 turn to remove it from the arena. Lastly, and probably the card that made the biggest impact in Levia's game plan, is the legendary Shadow Demi-Hero double-sided card Levia Redeemed, Blasmophet, Levia Consumed. This is the first of its kind, as it doesn't live in your deck but stays in your inventory during a game until you meet the condition and activation requirement on either side. Once met, your hero will transform into either Levia Redeemed, turning off Blood Debt for the rest of the game, or give into the bloodthirst and become Blasmophet, Levia Consumed, flipping the banish mechanic upside down. To better explain this card, I will be using the rules reprise number 15, Shadow, from Joshua Scott. Transforming into Levia Redeemed is relatively straightforward. First demi-hero card must be in your inventory. Second, you need to have 13 or more cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone face up. Third and finally, you activate the action ability by revealing Levia Blasmophet from your inventory and turning all of the cards currently in your banish zone face down as part of its cost. When you transform into Levia Redeemed, your current hero goes underneath Levia Redeemed, and Levia Redeemed becomes your hero for the remainder of the game. Your life total is reset to 8 regardless of the life total you had before. After the transformation, Levia has only one relevant ability. Cards you own lose Blood Debt. As Levia Redeemed, you have a single ability that removes Blood Debt from all the cards that you own. This includes the cards in any zone, and not just from your banish zone. While this does remove the threat of losing the game due to Blood Debt, it also limits the effectiveness of some Shadowbrood cards. Transforming into Blasmophet Levia Consumed is a little more complex. First, you will need to have 1 or more cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone. Second, at the end of your turn, Blood Debt needs to trigger and resolve, bringing your life total to 13. Third and finally, you trigger the transformation by revealing Levia Blasmophet from your inventory. Let's rewind back. One of the most important interactions to note here is that if you have 2 or more cards with Blood Debt face up in your banish zone, each of those cards create a single trigger layer, which resolves 1 at a time. This means if you're at 14 life and you have 3 cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone, you can resolve a single Blood Debt trigger, then transform into Blasmophet Levia Consumed, then finally resolve the remaining 2 Blood Debt triggers. When you transform into Blasmophet Levia Consumed, your current hero goes underneath Blasmophet, and Blasmophet becomes your hero for the remainder of the game. Your life total remains at 13. After the transformation, Blasmophet has 3 separate abilities. First, once each turn, you may play a card with Blood Debt from your banish zone. This ability allows you to play a single face-up card with Blood Debt from your banish zone. You can even use this on your opponent's turn, such as playing Guardian of the Shadow Realm during the reaction step. If a card may be played from the banish zone through another effect or ability, such as Howl from Beyond, it does not consume this once per turn ability. Second, whenever a card is put in your banish zone, turn it face down. This ability simply turns any card banished to be face down. What is important to note here is that it's a triggered ability, meaning that the card is first banished, typically face up, and then turned face down. This is relevant for cards that depend on having banished a 6+ attack power card like Dread Screamer. Note that cards that were banished before your transformation are still face up. Third and final ability, if you would lose life from Blood Death, instead banish the top card of your deck. This ability simply changes Blood Death life loss into banishing cards from the top of your deck. After you transform into Blasmophet, any remaining Blood Death trigger that need to be resolved that turn would be affected by this, and instead of taking the remainder of Blood Death life loss, you just banish that many cards from the top of your deck. Because of the previous ability, the banished cards is then turned face down. I know that this one is a little bit more complex, and I will make sure to add an example of the Blasmophet Levia consumed transformation in the gameplay. If you are considering playing Levia, you will have access to higher quality equipment. There are a few options here, so I will only cover a few. Carrion Husk is a Shadow Legendary chest equipment that blocks for 6 that says, if you defend with Carrion Husk, banish it when the combat chain closes. At the start of your turn, if you have 13 or less life, banish Carrion Husk. Blocking for 6 is amazing, but this one does have Blood Death, so think wisely when deciding to use this equipment, but be mindful of your life total. If you reach 13 or less, this equipment will automatically be placed in your banish zone without getting any block value out of it. Scabskin Leathers, the legendary brute leg equipment, says, once per turn action, at 0 cost, roll a 6-sided die. Gain action points equal to half the number rolled, rounded down. This is great if you want to try to gain extra action points, but beware, if you roll a 1, this will consume your action point and your turn will end. It also has a robust unconditional block of 2. The next 3 I would still consider budget friendly. Spoiled Skull. For 1 resource, banish this. Target 3 action cards with different names in your banish zone. You choose one at random. You may play it this turn. Secondly, this equipment has built-in Arcane Barrier 1. This will be useful against heroes that deals arcane damage. Do note that this equipment has Blood Death as well. Then you have Skullhorn, that has Arcane Barrier 2 with a different action that may be useful in some circumstances. Then we have Scowling Fleshbag. When this defends, Intimidate. Intimidate means target hero banishes face down a random card from their hand. At the beginning of the end phase, return it to its owner's hand. This equipment does have Blade Break, meaning when the combat chain closes, if this defended, destroy it. As an honorable mention, we have Gambler's Glove. Roll the 1 on Scabskin Leathers and want a shot at re-rolling a dice, this equipment is for you. The interesting part of this one, since it's a generic, your opponent can also choose to use this equipment and force you to re-roll one of your good rolls. Just a quick disclaimer, many heroes benefit from using generic legendary equipment, and Levia is no exception, but will not be including these today. If you're looking to level up your Levia gameplay, make sure to check out her faithful servant's channel, Mansant. He offers up-to-date strategies to master this hero. His channel was a great resource in the creation of this video. Alright, let's have a look at a few possible hands only utilizing the equipment and cards introduced today. For our first example, let's say our opponent went first and we blocked with a Red Howl from Beyond and Graveling Growl. We draw back up for our first turn. Let's slowly start to fill up our graveyard with good targets. Our cards are Convulsions from the Bellow of Hell blue, Endless Maw red, Deadwood Rumbler red, and Recursion blue. Looking at our hand, we have a couple of options, so let's walk through them. First, Endless Maw requires 3 cards to be banished from our graveyard, and we currently only have 2 here. Even if we have 3, we don't want to start banishing cards with Blood Death anyway, so Endless Maw will not be a card we will play. Convulsions from the Bellow of Hell is a great card, but truly shines in the late game, so this will likely be our pitch card. We are left with Deadwood Rumbler and Recursion. Deadwood Rumbler attacks for more and doesn't block, meaning it's better to be played than kept in hand. Let's play Deadwood Rumbler, pitching the blue Convulsions from the Bell of Hell. We then need to draw a card and discard a card. If the card discarded is 6+ attack power, we banish a card from a graveyard. We draw a red Ram Raider. Then we must discard a random card. Let's say the card discarded is Endless Maw. Since this one is a 6 attack power, we must banish a card from a graveyard. Let's target our opponent's graveyard and banish a card. We end our turn placing the Ram Raider in Arsenal, keeping the blue card in hand. Simple turn that added a card to our graveyard and cycled back a great late game target in our deck for second cycle. For our next example, let's say it's later in the game and we have a good number of cards in graveyard. Let's start banishing some of them. We have a red Dread Screamer in Arsenal. Our cards are Graveling Growl Red, Unworldly Bellow Blue, Mark of the Beast, and Endless Maw Red. Let's start by playing Dread Screamer. Pitching Unworldly Bellow, we will have one floating resource. As an additional cost to play Dread Screamer, we banish 3 cards from our graveyard. This can be done in a few different ways, but must be randomized. Let's shuffle up our graveyard and turn them face down. Let's ask our opponent to pick 3 cards. Let's say the cards banished are Soul Harvest, Blue Deadwood Rumbler, and Red Howl. Now 2 of the 3 has Blood Debt, but most importantly, we did successfully banish a 6+ attack power card. Dread Screamer will now come in for 6, go again. Fantastic. We will track the cards with Blood Debt in our banish zone using a d6. Looking at the cards that we banish, we have a Howl from Beyond. What's great about this one is that you can play it out of your banish zone. Let's do that. Since we already banished a 6+ attack this turn, we already satisfied the Blood Debt clause for this turn. So let's cycle back Mark of the Beast back in the deck. We will now play the Howl from Beyond from our banish zone, pitching Mark of the Beast. We will have one floating resource. Howl from Beyond will give our next attack action card plus 3 attack power. Since we successfully banished a 6+ attack power card this turn, we can use our remaining resource to play our Graveling Growl. This will come in for a total of 10 attack power from our Howl from Beyond buff. We end our turn without taking any Blood Debt damage and placing Endless Maw in Arsenal. We need to be mindful now that we have one card with Blood Debt in our banish zone. If we are unable to successfully banish a 6+ attack power card each turn moving forward, we will lose life for each Blood Debt card in our banish zone. For our third example, let's say this is a different game and we are using different equipment and weapon, and it's also later in the game. Let's do something different and look at our opponent and plan our next big move. Our cards are Deadwood Rumbler Red, Unworldly Bellow Blue, Howl from Beyond Red, and Boneyard Marauder Red. Okay, let's pretend our life total is 19. Our opponent is Azalea and presenting us with an Infecting Shot laced with Frailty for 11 Dominate. On hit, they will create a Blood Rot and Frailty token under our control. Frailty are attack action cards played from Arsenal and weapon attacks have -1 attack power. Blood Rot Pox at the beginning of our end phase destroy this token, and this will deal 2 damage to us unless we pay 3 resources. Let's analyze this. Since we are at 19 life, if we take this damage, we'll go below 13 life, meaning we will automatically lose our Carrion Husk and will no longer have the chance to transform into Blasmophet Levia Consumed. We want to plan this appropriately as we want to be able to trigger Blasmophet Levia Consumed. Since it's dominated, let's block with our Howl from Beyond from hand and Carrion Husk. This blocks for a total of 8, meaning we will take 3 points of damage, taking us down to 16. Azalea gives us a Blood Rot Pox and a Frailty token. On our turn, we are left with Deadwood Rumbler Red, Unworldly Bellow Blue, and Boneyard Marauder. Normally here, we would want to play the Boneyard Marauder to turn off the Blood Debt clause, but not this time. Instead, let's play Deadwood Rumbler, pitching the Unworldly Bellow. We then need to draw and discard a random card. We draw a red Endless Maw. We ask our opponent to pick one at random and they discard Endless Maw. Deadwood Rumbler will come in for 8. Our opponent opts to block with 2 cards from hand and take 2 points of damage. At the beginning of our end phase, a few things will happen. First, let's trigger the Blood Rot Pox. We opt not to pay, so we will take 2 damage here, bringing us to 14 life. Then, let's resolve our Blood Debt. We have a total of 6 Blood Debt cards in our Banish zone. These trigger 1 at a time. The first point of Blood Debt will tick us down to 13 life, meaning we have now satisfied the Blasmophet Levia consumed condition and transform. Once each turn, we can play a card with Blood Debt from our Banish zone, and whenever a card is put in our Banish zone, it turns face down. The last part is relevant immediately. If you would lose life from Blood Debt, instead banish the top card of your deck. We will have 5 points of Blood Debt to deal with. We then banish the top 5 cards from our library and turn them face down. We no longer have access to these. We end our turn placing the Boneyard Marauder in Arsenal. For our last example, let's ramp up the difficulty and play it as our new form, Blasmophet Levia Consumed. Let's say we have a blue Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell in Arsenal. Our cards are Wrecker Romp blue, Graveling Growl yellow, Blood Rush Bellow, and Soul Harvest. Let's start by playing Blood Rush Bellow, pitching the Wrecker Romp. We have 2 floating resources. As an additional cost, we must discard a random card. The good news, we only have good targets in hand. Our opponent picks a card at random and picks the Graveling Growl. All our brute attacks this turn gains +2 attack power for the rest of the turn, and since a 6+ attack power was discarded, we draw 2 cards and gain Go Again. The 2 cards we draw are Red Boneyard Marauder and Yellow Dread Screamer. Now evaluating what we do next, Soul Harvest is a great card, but we will need about 9 cards to banish from our graveyard this turn to do other plays. In this instant, it will be more useful as a pitch card. Let's first attack with one of our Mandible Claws, using the 2 floating resources. Since we already discarded 6+ attack this turn, Mandible Claws will gain Go Again. This will come in for a total of 5 attack power from Blood Rush Bellow, since it targets all brute attacks this turn. Next, let's play one of our Demi-Hero ability and play one of our Blood Debt card in our available Banish zone. Let's target the Red Dread Screamer, pitching the Yellow Dread Screamer. We currently only have 2 misses in our graveyard, so we're looking good. Our opponent picks 3 cards at random, and sure enough, we have a 6 attack power. These are now turned side down and no longer accessible. Dread Screamer will come in for a total 8 attack power. Go again. Let's break the combat chain and play Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell from Arsenal, pitching the Soul Harvest. We will have 1 floating resource. As an additional cost, we need to banish 3 cards from our graveyard. Our opponent picks 3 at random, and 1 6+ attack power was banished. Convulsions will now give our next attack action +1 attack power and dominate. With our remaining resource, let's play our Boneyard Marauder. You know the drill. As an additional cost, we need to banish 3 cards. We only have 6 cards left, with only 1 miss, so we are in the clear. Our opponent picks 3 cards at random, we banish them side down. Boneyard Marauder will come in for a total of 9 attack power and dominate. 2 from the Blood Rush Bellows, and 1 and dominate from Convulsions. Now, if our opponent is still alive, at the beginning of our end phase, we must trigger our alternative Blood Debt trigger. We have 5 remaining face-up Blood Debt cards in our Banish zone. We then banish the top 5 cards from our library and place them face down in our Banish zone. From Farmhand to Shadowborn Abomination, Levia's transformation isn't by chance. Succumb to the Dark Lord Blasmophet and join your brethren in their quest to tear Solana asunder. This was Jackie for the Fab Workshop. See you next time, and thanks for watching.